Hello everyone, James Donaldson here, and first I'm gonna say if you want to support me, Patreon, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on all three under The Contemporary Gentleman, so look me up. Anyway, getting into it, today we're going to be talking about all the options and figuring out what you need to figure out when you want to buy a weapon light. So we're going to cover some of the more common options, so do understand that there are outliers. Anyway, for what I'm going to tell you, stay tuned. Alright, so jumping right into the meat and potatoes, the things you want to think about, roughly in the order you want to think about them is use, size and fitment, reliability, Lumens, features. And we'll get into features here in a minute. And the reason for that order is if you want to conceal a light on your pistol, you probably shouldn't get a light like this. Now some people get away with one of these, the Surefire X300. I tried doing that for a while. It's too much. But anyway, you get the idea. So, use is kind of the first thing you need to figure out, because the other stuff doesn't really matter if it's not going to work for what you're going to use it for. Now, next, size and fitment. I know I've got reliability third, but reliability doesn't really matter if you're not going to be able to use the light in the first place. So, size and fitment, again, not going to use that rifle light on a concealed carry pistol. Things to think about. Now, reliability. Definitely want something that's going to be reliable. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but I'm going to throw out names. Surefire Streamlight. I own ones from both brands. I think they're pretty top tier. Arisaka, Modlight, there are other names I hear from trusted sources. So I'll go ahead and say look into them as well, but do your research. I'm not the only expert out there. In fact, I hesitate to use the word expert at all. But I do have some experience and knowledge. Now, Lumens. Big thing to go over here. Basically, lumens are not everything. So, you need to understand that this, putting out 1,000 lumens, and I'm going to do a little video demonstrating. You need to understand that the other one I just showed you, while brighter than this one, 300 lumens, there's a lot of application to them. So like I said, this was too much to keep carrying, whereas this one I love. In fact, I'm going to do a video on why I bought it all by itself. Now, getting into features, so some things to think about. And these are in no particular order, but is it just on-off? Is it modulating? Is it both? Most are going to be both. What are the switch locations? For this one, you've got this rocker, and so you can rock it up or down for constant on, and you push it forward for momentary. So those are the controls for this. Pushing down on the little toggles, there's one on each side, the other one has them too. So most of these are going to be ambidextrous controls, and then if I tap it just quick enough, it's constant on, but also I have a little switch on the side. So controls, that's a simple example of controls. Now, batteries, what type of batteries this uses? AAA, so it's actually very easy to source. Some people that want to go this far with it when you're thinking about end of the world scenario, granted 123 alpha batteries are getting pretty common because they're using so many things like weapon lights and lasers and all that kind of stuff, but still your AAAs are going to be very easy to find. So end of the world, Walking Dead scenario, if you need a light for your, or a battery for your light, you're probably going to find one easier for this light than you are something like this. So things to think about. Also, do they do dual fuel? Streamlight makes a couple handheld lights that you can do 123 alpha battery or AA, so I think that's pretty cool. And then of course, how do you access the batteries? For most of these it's pretty simple. You don't need tools, but you never know. I don't know every light out there. So now mounting, that is a big deal. I like quick mount. Unfortunately, this light, I think my only complaint is that it doesn't have a quick mount feature. I think it would mount better. And I don't like the idea of needing a tool. Now, they did choose an Allen wrench, so pretty common, not hard tool to find, and of course they send you one with it, so that's nice. This, quick on off, I love that. this isn't aiming, I'm not zeroing a light. I like that it can just go on and off. They do have one same light, just different variant where you can tighten it down. That's great. You know, if I was mounting it to something like an AR, tightening down would be fine. But anyway, here's one. This has deal you tighten, loosen, whatever, taking it off, putting it on. So yeah, now switches and things like this. Weapon lights, you can get these extended deals. You can also get them for those pistol lights actually. So temporary, constant on. You get the idea. Really great. So now there's also IR lasers, etc. Talk a little bit IR in the other video. I'm not going to get into it much here since I did talk about it there, but it's something else to consider. Do you have an IR function, etc., etc. Caveats and variables. Some are, as in some lights, are marketed, such as the Surefire X300 and even the XC1 here. They're marketed for both pistol and rifle use. All I'm going to say about that is, yeah, they totally can work for that. To a degree, a light is a light, as long as you're familiar, as I talk about in my other light video, being familiar with your light and how to use it. So yeah, they can. Excuse me. That said, I do find that when you use a light for what it's more designed for, it's a little more fluid, at least in my experience. So if it's meant for pistol, I recommend using it on a pistol and vice versa. But let's say you can only afford one light, and so you have a couple different defensive weapons. So anyway, again, do what works best for you. But as buying advice, if you have the means, I recommend purchasing rifle for rifle, pistol for pistol. So, quest for lumens. Let's get into this. So, here we go. I'm doing a sweep of the office. And here's a classroom, so we've got light coming in, obviously dimly lit, corners are a little darker. And then we go into this shop here. And in the shop, obviously blackout, kind of looking around, showing how it looks. Now we move into the warehouse where I'm kind of shining around. You can see what it looks like kind of with the light, without. Again, dimly lit. But here's where we have a bigger room with dark areas far away. And so as you see me scan, you're going to notice, okay, can I get positive identification down back in that corner? And that's where, yeah, lumens can help, but I think what you'll be surprised about is how well the 300 lumen Surefire XC1 does. Here's the last little bit I wanted to show from far away, kind of lighten up this little shelf here with both of them. And then we'll go to, here we are back in the shop. It's a dark room, just direct comparison of one light to the other. 1000 lumens, 300. Look how good it really does. Alright, so as you can see, lumens, they're not something to chase after. Obviously, if you're gonna, I'm a violence of execution kind of guy. So for me, I was going after small. That's what I went after. Not at giving up lumens to where I can't see, but doing my research, I saw that this would present very well in terms of illumination, and it has. So definitely no regret in purchasing this. Now, in this case, size really didn't matter to a degree, and so X300, all the lumens for the most part. There are a couple, there's a light or two on the market that has more lumens. Get to them in just a second. Now, let's talk brands. So getting into popular brands, Surefire, especially the X300 for pistols, and Streamlight really stand out. Now Modlite, Arisaka, there's some other ones, then Enforce. I've heard See where I hear no negative things about the other ones I just mentioned. I've heard a couple negative things about M-Force. I'm not saying it's a bad light, not saying don't buy it. That's just what I've heard. I don't have any. So if I could ever get familiar with them, maybe. But I do know, at least I understand, I don't think they're made out of metal. So while they're very light, for me, I'd rather have the weight. Especially because I look at the weight as a pro to a degree, not a con. And then there's Olight. I've owned an Olight. It was 1200 lumens. It was pretty bright. But it had this like, don't use all the lumens feature. If you use the light, not even that much. It was not great for batteries, and really no holsters are made for it. And in the end, I went with the X300. So now I'm going to get into some of the lights I have and use. So the first one I'm going to hit on is my Streamlight HLX, ProTac HLX. I have two of these, one for my service weapon and one for this rifle right here, or pistol, excuse me, ATF. It's a pistol. It has a brace. So anyway, what I will tell you is they've been fantastic. My service one, I used it all throughout Afghanistan, before Afghanistan, after Afghanistan, during Afghanistan, just so you knew what I was doing. I was in vehicles a lot, but I also dismounted. So I did a lot of dismounted work and a lot of work inside vehicles. Why that's relevant is my light was literally being banged around all kinds of places, in and out of vehicles, all over the inside of vehicles, and around northern Afghanistan. So again, not trying to use my service as like, hey, I know more, but I'm just telling you that experience put a lot of abuse on some of my gear, which I'll be doing reviews on. And if anything, accelerated the amount of abuse a lot of items, people that don't do that stuff, are going to see on a daily basis. So my light making it through 9 months in Afghanistan could be equivalent to what someone's going to put their light through in 10 years. So it's just an example. Now that said, I'm going to tell you that I have the Surefire dual pressure pad for my service weapon because I use a PEC 15 IR illuminator laser. And that is relevant because I only have momentary on for white light, and of course, because of the way the PEC works, I can do constant. That's not that big a deal. Point is that using Surefire, basically illumination hardware, it's been fantastic. The light's been perfect. Now, this pressure switch from Streamlight has not been perfect. It seems like when the gun heats up, the light doesn't want to turn on no matter which method I use to actuate it, temporary or constant on. This is a sample size of 1, and it could be that I got maybe a 0.5% of theirs that went out for one batch weren't perfect. So that's one of the ones I got. Not making excuses, but I am telling you that that is my experience. And because it's my experience, and that's why I'm not making excuses, I do recommend getting Surefire hardware. Now you do need an adapter piece, which you can get from Arasaka, to adapt your Streamlight to the Surefire pieces. So that is something to consider. You're going to be spending more money. Therefore, I think if I was to buy another light, because of adding the hardware, I would maybe spend the extra money on the Surefire, just because with the Streamlight I'm buying a light that I would say is as good, but then I'm trying to compensate with better hardware that I would have just gotten otherwise, or because that adapter's $100, I would maybe save $50 to $100 depending on everything added up. So financially, I actually might go with a Surefire next time. Anyway, enough about that. Let's move on to the next one. The next one is my Surefire X300 Alpha. The Alpha because it's quick release. I love the quick release. That is among my favorite features. One of the big reasons I bought this light is because if you've seen my suppressed pistol holster reviews, it's pretty much the only light you can use with a suppressed pistol holster, other than one which I've yet to acquire, which you can use a TLR-1. So it was actually very much a business decision, if you want to call what I'm doing a business. I don't. Anyway, but it was a business decision for lack of a better term, because that works with a lot of holsters and is a very ubiquitous item. So when I talk to somebody about, can I get a holster for this or that, which haven't yet, but they are always glad to hear when I say I have a Glock 17 with an X300. Pretty much two of the most ubiquitous items in their categories. So for work use, great. Reliability and durability, outstanding light. I use it for You know, basically if I'm not using this light on my 26XL, then I have this slide on my 17 full-size lower, and so going hunting or just shooting in a place where I can open carry, definitely using that full-size grip, definitely using that full-size light. XC1, so Surefire X300, great output, 1000 lumens. This 300, as I mentioned, for me it was very much about size and the controls. So very deliberate for on, very deliberate for, very deliberate for constant on, very deliberate for momentary. I will add that, if anything, I sometimes struggle to do the constant on by brushing the button versus hitting the switch. So you can activate on constant on both ways. So I think this is good because I'd rather struggle to do constant on than accidentally have constant on happen when I'm trying to do temporary. So that's a big thing I like about this light a lot. Video coming on this light alone, so I won't go into it too much beyond there. Now here is kind of an overview of my Streamlight TLR1 HL real quick. It's about 800-900 lumens. It's a lot less expensive than the X300, so if you don't need an X300 over this, I very much recommend this. I do have somebody I deployed with, they're a cop full-time, they use a TLR1 full-time. The only negative thing I've ever heard about it is sometimes you can have a negligent discharge because the switch is easier to manipulate than the X300. Only note that I'll throw in. Now, bringing it back real quick, I will mention negligent discharge. Something to keep in mind when buying a light is you don't want one that you can accidentally turn on. That is something you definitely want to avoid. Part of that will come down to your holster, part of that's the controls. I still think the Streamlight and Surefire controls are really great. So, the other ones I'm not as familiar with. And the close. I would say at this point that a light for a defensive weapon is a necessity, and which one's right for you is going to be up to you, the user. Now, as long as it's reliable and you actually train with it, I think you'll be effective, and therefore prepared for any scenario you may encounter. So this has been James Donaldson with the Contemporary Gentleman, and until next time, keep your composure.